Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, everyone. I know we are all excited to be here, but we are starting off. Welcome to one of Capricorn Group's Stimulating Inspire sessions, our very popular thought leadership information sessions geared towards really inspiring our stakeholders and the public through critical discussions that drive change. I am Grace Livindau of the Capricorn Group, and thank you so much for joining us here today, here in this room, as well as online, our social media guests. Thank you so much for joining us on our respective platforms, that is Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and a special mention to Bank Gaborone, our bank in Botswana. We have clients watching as well from Bank Gaborone, so welcome. Now, as a group, we hold fast to our convictions that we can positively influence the communities in which we operate by being connectors of positive change. And that's how we stay true to our purpose. We go the extra mile, ensuring that we drive critical discussions by sharing knowledge and diverse points of view like we do today. Now, in this Inspire session titled The Future of Finance, we will delve deeper into how our financial experiences have changed and will change over the next decade. We'll also have a look at the instrumental role that information technology will play in supporting this change. As a Namibian-owned financial institution, Capricorn Group takes pride in its large IT resources and infrastructure with highly skilled developers, specialists, engineers, data scientists, and other specialized professions. Against this background, we bring you a session allowing ideas to be shared on what the future holds and how we can be a part of a world where the opportunities are genuinely exponential. Now, before we get to our key speaker, I would like to welcome Chris Huesep to do the welcoming remarks on behalf of Capricorn Group. As he comes on stage, Chris is the platform owner of the process automation platform at Group, a seasoned IT professional that enjoys working with people and is an agile evangelist. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Grace. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all of the young ones, colleagues, and everyone online. So, I just asked a group of students, I think it was Concordia, this group, what is finance? And they said finance is money. From my understanding, finance is about managing money and anything to do with money. And where we as Capricorn Group and the banking industry comes in is how we make use of technology to help you manage your money, If you've ever sent a wallet, if you've used a mobile app, tap to pay, anything. So that uses financial technology to enable you to manage your money, use it for credit, banking, investments, etc. So the banking environment is very competitive, So you have to keep up with pace, changing technologies. That's why we at Capricorn Group IT, we always try to make use of the best technology out there to help enable us to serve our customers better, inside and external as well. That being said, regarding what our speaker will speak about today, I'm not sure if I should be scared or excited. Excited from a customer's perspective, what is all the new things I can do now? Managing money, you can do things from your couch. And scared as well from working with a big group of IT team members, what it means for us. Will we be burning more midnight oil at night, just to do deployments? So I'm eagerly looking forward to what are the new trends out there, what we can use in our environment, especially in a Namibian context or Botswana context, and also just to find out, what we need to do better, how do we enable these future leaders, hopefully going into the IT space. How do we inspire you to one day join Capricorn Group IT or invest in the required skills for you to contribute to the fourth industrial revolution, as they call it. That being said, Capricorn Group IT, we always try to push the boundaries. We try to deliver products in an iterative manner to our customers. There is always learning curves, but I feel being the biggest IT shop in Namibia, it really adds value, and it's good to see these young students here. Hopefully the messages that we will get today in terms of the technology we use, what is out there, it will help you shape what you want to study in the future. That being said, I would like to welcome everyone to this inspiring session. Welcome Colin as well, and really to see what we can do and adopt in our landscape. Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to invite, is it Peo? Oh, Grace, please. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for that lovely word of welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Capricorn Group, I am pleased to introduce our special invited guest for this morning, Colin Iles, with a great portfolio, if you don't mind me reading through it. Iles offered, I hope I'm saying your surname correctly. You can come and correct me when you get up here.
No, it's
but
wrong.
Is it wrong?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Okay,
Everyone gets it wrong.
While you're coming up, Colin offers a variety of disruptive interventions for a variety of clients that want to accelerate their company's growth prospects. His 21st Century Leadership Program shows executives how to innovate at scale.
How many pages have you got?
Colin.
Sorry. I don't want to be disruptive here. Sorry, Carol. I'll sit down.
It's just another paragraph.
All right.
It's just for formality's sake. So please
We've only got until 10.
Just bear with me. I'll go back again one sentence. His 21st Century Leadership Program shows executives how to innovate at scale using techniques applied by some of the world's most courageous leaders. Some of his clients include global brands such as Google, AWS, Nando's, and Colin previously worked in the financial sector and held various senior, I hope he's not doing funny faces behind me, held various senior investment banking roles in Frankfurt, Singapore, and Johannesburg. He co-founded UCT's African Institute of Financial Markets Risk Management and is a Gordon Institute of Business Science Professional Associate, where he supports the Center for African Management and Markets. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and enjoy this revolutionary discussion.
Thank you very much. Well, that was boring. At least I'm not seasoned. Sorry, Chris. Everyone that's under 20, please stand up. It's just like assembly, hey? In many ways, I hope that you get the most out of this particular presentation. You can sit down again. But I just want to make one observation before we kick off there. Money is awesome. Banking and financial services is awesome. If you're looking to choose a career to go into where you're at the cutting edge of literally changing societies, I really do advise that you think about financial services. Because just think about money for an instance and what it is, right? This is something that even adults struggle with. It doesn't exist. This exists. This is a table. Money and the whole financial system that we work within is a fantasy. It's a story. We've made it up. And we've made it up because we needed a way that we could actually trade with each other. We needed something which we could make as a medium of exchange to store value. And so banks and financial services aren't really, in my opinion, in the business of the money. They're in the business of helping people to live lives, to commerce, to trade, to retire, to buy boats. And then when you start thinking about the outcomes that you want, I think it opens up a totally different perspective of what you can do in financial services. And what I'm excited about is the fact that when you look at where technology is now, we have got masses and masses of opportunities to democratize finance, to open it up for everyone on the planet, to give opportunities, because there is nothing that we can do to be successful in this world today without having access to some sort of finance. So it's just something to think about before we get started. Let's get started. Okay, so we've done the intro. I like doing these types of events and thought leadership because I really want to inspire people to think differently. Okay? Think where the puck, if you're into ice hockey, is going to be in 5 or 10 years. Plan what you're doing around where things will be. Very difficult to predict where things will be, but much better to think about how that journey could be. What's happening today is irrelevant. In 10 or 15 years, things are going to be radically different. That's my view. You've got to make up your view. And then depending on what your view is and how quickly you think things are going to change, you take your decisions about what you learn, what you're curious about, how you run your businesses. But I'm absolutely certain if you believe that the stuff that's happening today will be exactly the same in 10 years' time, you've got it wrong. Let's go through some examples. What is the future of finance? I think the future of finance is exponential. Let's demo what exponential is, okay? I'm going to walk a few paces. 1, 2, 3. Assuming that each pace is a meter, I've gone 3 meters. Imagine what would happen if you had the ability to double your pace every stride. 1, 2, oh, I won't do more, we could get in trouble. Do that 26 times, you'll go around the world. Or is it 30 times, you go around the world 26 times? It really doesn't matter. The scale of what impacts on these exponential trends is, you just can't understand it. And so when you're sitting here and you think about, do I invest in something today and there's compound interest at 10% per annum for the next 40 years, you will not imagine, it doesn't make sense how much you can actually accumulate in terms of capital. But it's not just about using money and compound interest. It's about then saying what's happening in the world of technology, because we're living in a world where we've got exponential change happening today right in front of our noses. And it's not just on one technology that's becoming cheaper or more accessible or more useful in some way or another. It's masses of numbers of different technologies. It's like we've got multiple Gutenberg moments happening at the same time. And for those that don't know, Gutenberg was the printing press, which changed everything in how we consume information. It globalized the distribution of information. A massive moment. Look at some of the examples that we've got, which are happening. Some of them might feel nascent and you can't actually imagine it. But then again, 10 years ago, for the older generation, we didn't really have mobile phones. I think it was 2008 when the iPhone came out, first smartphones. And we just accept it. It feels relatively slow, but the performance on the phones today is definitely accelerated compared to what we actually had then. What is it? 200, 400, 500 gigabyte phones are now commonplace. So we've got solar and wind coming through. Perhaps that's a bad example, but we're starting to see access to the internet from every part of the world. Elon Musk with Starlink, we'll mention in a moment. This was the Loon Balloon from Google. Robotics, starting to go and automate work that we don't want to be involved in. Battery technology with improved power and productivity and reduced costs. Nanobots. Artificial intelligence. DNA sequencing. 3D printing. Internet of Things. Blockchain. Telepathy, turning our thoughts into ones and zeros and then turning it back into thoughts. Virtual reality, going beyond just what we're seeing from gaming. And this is just a selection, you can add your own. But I find it fascinating because they're all working in concert, they're additive to each other. As we go and improve in one area, we see improvements in another. Let's think about a few examples. Here's the exponential decline in the cost of solar. It's now the cheapest energy source on the planet, and as soon as we work out how to go and scale it quickly, we solve a lot of the issues that we're facing in terms of greenhouse gases. Why weren't people predicting this 10 years ago? Why were people sitting there saying, solar. We've made so much progress over the last 20 years, it can't possibly get cheaper. There's a simple law, by the way, which has got nothing to do with particularly innovative technology design, Swanson's law. You just simply say, if we go and double the demand or double the output for something, you get a 20, 30% cost saving just because of supply chain management improvements. So we should expect solar costs to continue to decline and get cheaper and cheaper. And I like this chart, not because it's particularly exciting for the black line, but if this is the PV additions, photovoltaic additions that have actually happened, what you're seeing here is the predictions from the International Energy Authority. And it's such a good graph to go and understand how bad we are as humans in predicting exponential trends. There's some years where they thought that PV additions would actually go down. How can you do that? Another great example is our inability to predict what happened in 2008, 2009 with the financial crisis, S&P going and actually having ratings which clearly were not reliant. We're really bad at making predictions. Cost of batteries going down, annual demand going up on an exponential trend. Cost of DNA sequencing, it was $100 million for the first sequence at the turn of the century. You've now got platforms out there for less than $1,000 who are doing it at scale and offering you the ability to sequence your DNA for less than $100. And people are forecasting that we should see this to go down to a level where it's cheaper than flushing the toilet. Think what that does for medicine. For you guys, this is exciting. It should be, because you could be the generation that potentially lives forever. And if not forever, at least for well over 100 to 150. And in a state where you're not being prodded along with all sorts of interventions. You're mentally healthy. You don't have Alzheimer's. You've got the ability to still walk and run and play. It could be your generation because of technologies like this and many others. In fact, BioSplice, which used to be called Samumed, a firm over in the US, they've had billions of dollars of funding. Their mission, their statement is to help people to get younger. They're in phase 3 clinical trials for a cream which you can put on 80-year-olds who've lost all their cartilage, which will quite literally stimulate stem cells to regrow that cartilage back to when you were a sort of 15, 16-year-old adult or the equivalent. And that's just one of many companies on this techno bandwagon. Cost of drones. So whether it be increased capacity or the distance that you can fly continues to go down exponentially in the price for that ability. And so Uber and other companies are having a look and seeing how we can use drone technologies to replace taxis. Some are forecasting that we could see them coming out in Los Angeles and San Francisco in the next couple of years, and they'll be cheaper than Uber to go from point to point. But the really exciting one, I think, is in the technology space, is in transistors, is in the gubbings of what's happening in computers. This is a algorithmic scale, which looks really boring. It looks like a straight line, but it's showing you Moore's laws about how every year or two we double the number of transistors in chips. Or essentially, we're able to go and do much more with the chips at a lower cost year in, year out. But I think it looks better when you put it on a linear scale. Because it tells us that, I don't know, what's that, up until 2010, really nothing has happened. I remember using computers before 2010. A lot was happening. But it's been nothing compared to what we've seen developed over the last 12 years. Now you go forward another 10 years and assume this doubling keeps continuing. What does that mean? It means that we haven't seen anything yet. Our ability to go and process data is just at the nascent stages of the possibilities that are coming. And then with quantum computing coming in and Google and others announcing that they've now designed quantum computers that are hundreds of millions of times more powerful than our existing computers today, what can we do with that? I think a lot. Some scary, mostly positive. But it's not just computing power, right? 4G data, this is from the US, the price has gone down almost 100%. What can you do when you start putting these things together? If we've got massive computing power and we can now access it much more cheaply, what can you do with it? Now we need to have the elements to access these things. This is Raspberry Pi at $25. Are we now reaching the space where phones, computers, tablets, Raspberry Pis are going to allow virtually everyone in the world to access data, to access the internet, to participate? Will it go down to zero? We're going to see Facebook models in the next couple of years where we become the product, but in a positive way, because they will give us the assets we need to access data in return for accepting marketing or other services. One thing's for sure, the penetration of mobile and our access to the internet will continue to grow. And if you think back to that first point, this is Starlink. 2018, there were no satellites allowing people to connect to the internet. Now there's 4,500 just in a couple of years. And that's continuing to grow. And other organizations like OneWeb and Amazon are looking at similar offerings. It's expensive today, $60 I think it is a month as a premium. How long before that becomes free? A decade? Remember this exponential scale. If you think linearly, it's going to be a long time. Of course, having these chips which can process at amazing speeds has been improved immensely because we now put it on the cloud. And if you want to think of a really cool example of how the cloud has helped, think about the conflict in Eastern Europe there. I think the government was very, very clever, understanding that Russia was likely to be invading. They took all of their data sets out of their hosted solutions and put them on the cloud. And within a day or two, missiles had actually hit Ukraine and destroyed their data centers. If they hadn't have moved onto the cloud and given themselves that backup and security, then they would be in real trouble, even bigger trouble than they already are. But cloud is more than that. It also gives access to all of us here to compute. Microservices. We don't have to buy our own servers or understand our own services. Directly or through third parties, anyone can now use the cloud, which means also anyone can basically set up a company to compete. That was never possible, 10, 15 years ago. Add in a bit of 5G, increase the bandwidth of what we can upload and download. This starts to open up new opportunities. Many who sit here, perhaps on the more elderly side, are thinking, well, I'm already happy with 4G. What else am I going to need this extra capacity for? Think what happens in a world where we start to go into VR, virtual reality, augmented reality. Might not be something that you want, our next generation are demanding it. And you can do interesting things with 5G because your autonomous cars can work with that type of technology. When you're in your virtual world, you can now have frames per second on your headsets at 120 or more, which means that you don't get that queasy feeling. It feels real. It means you can push content out where those avatars that look like cartoons become realistic and lifelike, mixed in with the cloud and the fact that everyone across the globe is getting access to data for cheaper prices. You see how these things are not only individually exponential, but they're augmenting. Against that backdrop of technology, how can things stay the same? Bill Gates, who I think is absolutely incredible, not only was he one of the key people that predicted, or one of the few people rather, that predicted COVID, unfortunately a bad prediction, I think it was 2014, 2015. I think he's also very sensible because he does highlight that when we look at these predictions and new technologies, what you tend to see is this overexcitement in the next 2 or 3 years. All these things are going to happen. And then we underestimate what actually then happens in the years after that. So when someone like Bill Gates is turning around and saying he can really see 3D spatial virtual worlds becoming the primary source for business to actually interact with each other in just a couple of years' time, it's worth taking heed of it. So if that's the tech side, it also needs people to join the party. And I think that as many of those examples are democratizing access to opportunity, we're also seeing people in mass start to understand and become part of it. So massive open online courses. This is an example from Udacity. You could have chosen several others. Does anyone here want to learn how to go and build a self-driving car? Go on to Udacity. You can now do it. And the success, you've seen, there was a case study of a bunch of kids, I think undergraduates in Indonesia, who've taken the course, and within 3 months they have built their self-driving car. And I'm not talking about at Tesla prices, with manufacturing. They've bought the LiDAR device, stuck it on the top of the car, jerry-rigged it, and they've got something which is working. Big tech realizes that we need more people in this space, so they're putting platforms in place to accelerate the development. A lot of people are saying that why do you need to go to school? I don't want to put bad ideas in your place, but maybe you should just go online and learn how to go and do AWS cloud certification. Because what we're seeing from big tech is they're taking people directly based on qualifications they've learned online. They've got no interest in whether you've gone to a school or university. And they've got big targets, 29 million that want to train in the next couple of years from Amazon, 25 for Microsoft, Google's similar. That's a lot of people. Add on things like Kaggle, another exponential growth. Don't know any data scientists? Well, they were hard to get a few years ago. Look at this growth of people who are working on the Kaggle platform, designed and built around this community of data scientists. 5 million, just in a few years, or sorry, 1 million in a few years there. That's up to 2017. Is it still exponential? Absolutely, they're now at 5 million users. What's going to happen in the next 5 years? Is it 10, then 20, then 40? How quickly is that going to grow? Look at India, look at China, look globally, and there is definitely not going to be a limitation in the talent pools available over the next couple of years, no matter what capacity constraints you feel like you've got today. Massive investments going into artificial intelligence. Predictions that we're just going to continue seeing. What is this CAGR? Compound annual growth doesn't actually say it, but is it 20-30% increases every year? Across every industry, you can't read those. There isn't an industry that isn't touched by these technological advancements, particularly in the machine learning space. What does this mean for us and how we use it? I'll read it out to you. Asked to clarify the reports, the spokesman for May said, the PM has made it absolutely clear her intention is to leave the EU as quickly as it's possible. And that will be under her negotiating mandate as confirmed in the Queen's speech last week. It sounds really plausible. But she or her advisors didn't write that. That's come from OpenAI, an Elon Musk project, where they've told a computer to go and generate something that they think would sound a little bit like what Theresa May would say. Here's another example. This is something that I was playing around with. I was trying to work out what to talk about, this idea of the future of finance. So I went onto this platform. It's called InferKit. And I typed some text here, and a neural network will then take it on. This is me typing, the future of finance will change drastically due to the, and then I stop. I should have given this to you, Grace, for your intro. Due to the Internet of Things, machine learning, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and blockchain, financial and banking professionals should not only ensure that their marketing, technology, and innovation departments are best in class, but they should also work closely with the business development team to ensure that their bank's offerings stand out in a landscape that will change. Okay? This is a freemium version, version 1.0. Think as we continue to use this technology to advance, what it's going to be like next year, in 2 years, in 4 years. It's not going to be linear and slightly better. We're going to get to a point later this decade where you can no longer differentiate between computer machine output like this and whether it's come from a human. And this is a prediction where, if you follow people like Ray Kurzweil, one of the senior engineers at Google, him and many others believe that that point is occurring over the next couple of years, 28 to 29. We're already seeing it. Why don't we go and turn it, rather than from a literacy benefit, maybe useful for marketing people to augment with that, to actually writing code? I don't know if you've got volume for this, guys.
Model to look up the current Bitcoin price.
Let's see if it works.
All right, so it seems to have done something. And by the way, this particular API, I guess, is used enough out there in public code that the model felt it was worth its while to memorize exactly how it works. And now let's actually send the email blast. Now send everyone an email telling them a hello world.
Okay, turn the volume off now. Just explain what's going on there. So they're typing in English. Now send everyone an email telling them hello world and be the current Bitcoin price. Okay? The algorithm is working out how to create the code from first principles that will make that action happen. So what does that mean? Are we moving into a world where it's not just low code, it's no code? But we're certainly, I think, moving into a world where, for a lot of people, you could be in marketing, you can have multiple skills and views, but you don't have to worry so much about the development side. Because either you may be able to do it yourself, you can use platforms, for example, like this, Easy Send. We don't want PDFs, we want to go and automate, we want to make it frictionless. Great, drag and drop, use something like this. Any person can go and set this up. Or even going into this low-code, no-code environment where we can talk and explain what we want, write down literally what the steps that we want to occur on the code be created. And obviously today, it will then have to be edited and reviewed. What's happening in 5 or 6 years in this ideal world where we hit the Turing test, where we can no longer differentiate between man and machine? Are we going to see computers going to that point where they actually write the code that we instruct them to go and do? Sound?
Hey, what's up, TikTok? Look, I do a lot of my own stunts, but I also do a lot of industrial cleanup, okay? It's important. So, obviously, you keep your hands clean, but you need that exfoliating product to really cut through the grime, okay? Just another tip for you talkers, or the TikTok tips. I'm getting too old for that. I don't... Internet.
So now we know why Tom Cruise is so young. He's fake, okay? But if he didn't have a little sign at the bottom there saying deep Tom Cruise hashtag, then you might not realize that this is not Tom Cruise. Someone has created this, all right? Scary, potentially, because you can go and create anything you want, any political leader, and go and convince people. But there's also some other interesting impacts, because use that technology, for example, to create digital avatars. I'm not going to play this one. This one I think is called, what's her name, Violet or Viola? You can go on Soul Machines and experiment, talk to Viola, see her facial expression change as you talk to her. Think forward 5 or 6 years, how this basic model will be transformed, because will you need to talk to real people? If the AI is now able to understand us from the way that we talk, from our body language, our expressions, it's able to source global knowledge by access to the internet and transmit it back to us in something which will look incredibly human-like. Will we be going into a space where we actually start interfacing with digital avatars more than with humans? Or reverse it, what happens on our side? Maybe the banks and the financial institutions, they start interfacing with our own avatars and not with us. And we have that as a protective layer in front of us to better manage our own lives. Possibilities are endless. Of course, what's driving this? Capital, massive amounts of capital. Was it the 8 wealthiest people have about 50% of the wealth of the poorest, or the top 100 have got 60, 70% of the global wealth? The top couple of 100, 90-odd%. It doesn't matter where you look at it. There are some incredibly rich individuals and organizations out there, and they are looking to put that money to work to go and solve global problems. And so it's no surprise that we've got companies like Sequoia and A16Z and many others pumping in huge amounts of money to go and create new organizations. And they're also doing it to service a new market, your market, Gen Z and Gen Alpha that's coming through, born digitally native, excited about the possibilities, and certainly not trained like your parents perhaps, or generation, what am I, generation, I don't know what generation I am, 40-odd generation. Who knows what that is? I don't want to know. But I'm a bit stuck in my ways, so maybe I'm not going to go and move. But it doesn't matter, because look at these population groups, coming through over the next couple of years in that 25 to 64 segment and the 15 to 24. There's massive opportunity. And so many companies are coming in, getting created, and we're seeing these unicorns develop. Unicorns, by the way, are $1 billion valued private companies. And whereas it might take, in the old days, 50 or 60 years to get to that valuation, some of these are being created and getting these valuations in the space of years. And there's examples of some organizations doing it in months. To go from an idea to a valuation in months, I mean, that's insane. But technology allows that. Let's bring it now into the fintech and the banking. Right? And it's where we're seeing huge growth. A lot of those numbers are based in fintech and financial services, because it is such a wonderful area to go and focus on. Think back to the start about you can't do anything in the world without money and finance. So there's a demand for it. And the existing incumbent organizations have generally done a fairly bad job, or at least they've done the job to a degree on the structures that they had, but they've become quite big. It's really difficult for them to go and make wholesale change. So there's lots of friction. And wherever there's friction, if you've got technology and a good idea, you can come in and you can create your company to go and solve it. And this is happening globally. You can see the number of fintech startups. What was it, 2018? Someone's worked this out. I don't know how accurate this is. What's that, 12,000 or so? A couple of years later, we're up to over 25,000. 25,000 fintech companies. Sometimes as small as 5 or 6 people wanting to solve an idea, getting a bit of funding, and off they go, and they may or may not be successful. When you've got that number, some of these guys are going to be incredibly successful. What they're also doing is disrupting the incumbents, though. We're seeing large companies go out of business because the market moves, there's new opportunities, fintechs, other startups come in and actually disrupt the whole model, and we see the end and the demise. And even for companies that survive, they see that they're having their income streams taken away because they're actually being disrupted. Look at this, 280 billion in payments revenue has now gone to fintechs, massive numbers. Stripe, Klarna, PayPal have disrupted markets on a global scale. And if you think about it, you could use any bank. It doesn't have to be Bank of America. And you want to look at this, I'll send that slide out to anyone that's interested. These are just examples of the different brand names of different fintechs. But what's interesting is they're sitting there disrupting the banking business or consumer lending or wealth and investments or credit cards or payments or deposits. They're touching every single area. And maybe the biggest disruptor is going to be blockchain. You can't do something like this without thinking about blockchain, but specifically decentralized finance. Do we even need organizations to go and help manage money and the products that go around with it? And we're seeing lots of interest at the moment where groups of people are getting together and they're creating DAOs, decentralized organizations, where there is no single authority, there's no hierarchy. They're working as a collective, a community. You invest into it, you take group decisions, you get things built, you start offering services. So a simple example there could be lending and borrowing. We'll pop in our, and it's usually a wallet or a crypto, but we'll use dollars. We'll pop in our dollars, we'll lend it out to another person within this community. He'll agree to pay a 10% return. That's exactly what banks do. Do you really need the bank in the middle, putting friction into the process, when we could just do it amongst ourselves if we can agree the terms and write a contract using blockchain where it's rigid and structured and we can't rip each other off? So we're seeing big growth in that space. And the other interesting thing on that, I think, is that it's not just a fanciful piece where it's a bunch of tech heads that are sitting in the US going and doing this. Maybe that's the starting point. But we've got platforms like Stellar opening opportunities for anyone to come up and set their own wallets to make payments across the globe. And there are other companies. But what I find interesting is you're starting to see them partner with proper companies, traditional companies. In this example, MoneyGram. So where Stellar benefit is that now once I've moved my wallet across the world, my fake money or whatever you want to go and call it, my token, when I want to cash it in, MoneyWeb are now providing that service so I can convert it back to fiat, to dollars. So how are things going to change in the next decade? I think Kurzweil really explains this as a possibility quite nicely. If you had 100 years of progress in the last century, you can think about this century as bringing you 20,000 years of progress. What does that all mean for finance? What does it mean for financial services and for you all sitting here? I think there's 5 or 6 things to think about. Firstly, I think neobanks are going to dominate. And I say this carefully in the sense that a neobank, and I don't know, let's use an example, N26 or Bank Zero in South Africa, or maybe Time Bank is potentially a neobank. But the main thing about a neobank is that they're fresh, they're new, they're digitally native. Anyone can become a neobank if they want to. Traditional banks can do neobanking stuff if they want to. Neobanks can start up as a startup in the middle of anywhere in the world from China. So the opportunity for anyone to be a neobank is there. But what we're seeing is that the ones that have started this tradition, they're already global. There's already 250, 300 odd neobanks around the world, and some of them are already massive. Some of them are brand names with millions of customers. N26, Revolut, Monzo, all very well known. SoFi over in the US, Stash, very well known. None here yet, as far as I'm aware. But that's something to think about. How long before they come here? Will they come here? Now look at the growth. It's another exponential curve. I find this particularly interesting. This one perhaps doesn't even summarize it. They're showing a sort of compound average growth rate of about 50% every single year. Not quite doubling, but still growing massively. But if you want to put that in something which is more useful, JP Morgan Chase, their valuation today is about 350 billion. So the neobanks collectively are tiny. They're less than JP Morgan. But if these rates of growth are accurate, we could be in a situation where those neobanks are 10x bigger than JP Morgan. Just in the space of 8 or so years. Think about that in another way. As these neobanks grow and they become sizable and big threats, what happens if they merge? Could we be in a scenario where the bank that will be the biggest bank in the world in as soon as a decade doesn't actually exist today because it hasn't been created? Why are they doing so well? I think there's 6 reasons. The first is kind of quite obvious, but they've got the ability to really focus on removing friction. In fact, if you think about it, innovation and problem solving, in essence, for anything that's going to be successful is about doing that. It's solving a problem that we face and removing friction from our lives. And if you're a fresh startup, right, that's what you can focus on. You've got no other worries. And in fact, you've got to be so razor sharp in terms of focusing on that because you don't have the money to go and start messing around with other ideas. Small groups of people, passionate about what they're trying to solve, trying to remove friction First idea that comes up, they run their experiments, they test, learn, iterate, they get evidence, many die, but the 5 or 6% that get through those early months have got a real opportunity to go and grow and get a real opportunity to get financial backing. And one of the ways that they remove friction is they don't worry about branches. What is the point of a branch? What benefit is there? I don't think anyone can see a real opportunity of going in and having an enjoyment at a branch experience. It's costing the consumer to have to go from his place or her place to the branch, so get rid of it. It should be instant. This isn't particularly instant. It's a start, I guess, from N26. Or have they got 8 minutes? I think there are better examples. But why does it take so long? Why isn't it it's a read on some sort of biometric of your body? It's an API into some database to conclude that you are who you are, and then you're up and running. Lemonade and Insurer in the US, they're making progress on that. They've got 90 seconds for you to get insured. Obviously no branches. And what I really like about Lemonade is you've got 3 minutes to get paid on a claim. When someone steals your phone or damages or you have the car crash, click the buttons, your money is then in your bank account. I think the second thing that successful companies are doing, whether you call them fintechs or now just more broadly what you can do in financial services, is remember you serve communities. And there's lots of different ways to think about this. But if you think about it, we're a very social animal. And so as a business, if I can use that knowledge to make sure that we keep you as a social community, okay, there's lots of really cool things that you can do. So again, using Lemonade as an example, they are masters at bringing people into their organization because they've got a give-back scheme. It starts with the fact that they tell people they're there to fix insurance. They've got a clear purpose. But once you join Lemonade, you have to decide which charity you're going to allocate any super profits to. They say up front, if we make too much money, I'm not going to make this decision between paying back to my customers versus paying over to the investors. I don't want that decision. We're going to put it into charity. So join a charity pot. If you want to go and support cancer or global warming or plastics in the ocean, pop your money into there and join that community. Lemonade have also now got an opportunity to keep in contact with their customers, and they're not selling their products anymore. They're having conversations about something good that's being done for the world. Who doesn't want to bank or insure with a financial institution that's actually more focused on doing good than selling you products and services? eToro is an investment platform where you become part of communities, and if you put investments in, we can follow you, a bit like a Facebook or an Instagram or TikTok. You can have followers and discussions and join, and it's all great for eToro. They're a broker platform. Using that community spirit, they obviously take commission for every single trade that goes through. Maybe you personalize in your communities. This is Envil. Craig Bond from South Africa is the chairman of this group, a new startup, 2 years old. You can personalize the colors of your app. You can actually set humor settings in there, whatever you think is best to try to remind you that when you get your salary or the income that's coming through, you just don't go and spend it. Try and keep them in there this month, will you? That's the one I would need. Why don't you go the next level and be niche? And this is so easy to do because, banking in a box, buy the service, rent it off someone else. I want to go and service these people. In this case, it's for musicians. I've got no idea how it works. I think we can turn the sound down on that. I don't know how long that goes on for. I've got no idea what they do that differentiates themselves, and I've got no idea why musicians need a different bank. But again, what I do know is if you're niche and community-driven, people will appreciate that if they are musicians. They're going to tell their musician friends, and they're going to build up an audience. All right? If you want another example, which is a lot more real, or at least more known about in the US, think about the veterans and the armed forces over there. They already have their own bank accounts for their communities. So these are tried and tested models, and tech allows us to do this at scale. One more example on communities is it's now being shown when you go and run the maths and use algorithms that if you are bringing people into your community and you lend them money, and they've been introduced by people already in your community, the chance of them defaulting is a lot less. So by running communities, you can offer better pricing to your customers. And you can do that at scale, whether it's based on Facebook networks and friends, or relationships, or other behaviorals that you start putting through your AI-driven algorithms. Number 3, I think successful fintechs, successful financial services organizations are being very event-driven. And by that I mean that they're really understanding our journeys, our customer life cycles. So for example, I don't go and flog you a lending product just because I give it to you. I wait, in this example, it's Klarna, until you're at the point of sale on a website, and then offer you the opportunity to essentially take a loan, to defer your payments over 2 months. I like this example from Metromile. I hope it's the start of where things should be going. Why am I paying a fixed sum for my insurance, when surely my insurance depends on how much I use the car, where I use the car? So if that car is sitting in my garage, I want the GPS locator to say that there is 0 insurance. It's not really going to, there's no hail damage, there's no weather damage, it's unlikely to be stolen. But when I get it and I start driving and I'm in this particular area or a motorway, we can show from our algorithm that the premium is going to have to go up. Now let's run that in real time. Let's also put depreciation in and understand that every time I drive it, the cost should come down because of the mileage has gone up. The other thing I think these new breed of companies are doing is they don't necessarily build. They don't feel like they've got to create everything. They're really good at partnering. And one way they can partner is by using APIs. APIs is another technology which has changed everything. Because now if I've got this vision, I've got this idea that I want to go and do, I can very quickly bring people together to allow me to take this idea to market. So when you look at this, even within it, another example, Spot Money in South Africa, they don't even have the banking license. They outsource that to Bidvest, I think. So you've got a company there which doesn't have the license because it's at Bidvest, and Bidvest control these particular processes. They've set up a banking marketplace by using other third-party services. They're a bank that could easily go and use an Easy Equities, for example, to offer equity services. They don't have to build these things themselves or even take on the licenses. So this fabric's changing because being a fintech, using technology, using APIs, you can pretty much access anything you want to go and create your bank, which makes it easier to be a community. It's these additive effects again. It makes it easier to go global. It makes it easier because they then put the algorithms in place where there's no people. ABSA's got 36,000 staff. I don't know, 8 to 10 million customers. I don't know how many active customers. Time's got 600. And is approaching the same number of customers as ABSA. It should get there in the next year or 2. Envil, which I've already mentioned, has got 20. When they started and they had the rep bank license up and running, they only had 10. And most of Envil's staff are developers. I.e., in theory, you could actually just say, we don't need to grow or do any more development work. You could probably still run what they're doing on 10 for their existing client base. So you can scale without hiring by using technology and by being digitally native. You can go global, and most of these people are trying to. Wise is now in, 30 or 40 countries. It's an awesome product. Blockchain takes it a step further. This is blockchain.com as they go global. And it's up to you whether you access their services. Some countries would see it as illegal. How long before someone comes to Namibia because they've created this service in South Africa or Kenya or America or China, and it's just so easy to move that code base here, JV, with another organization that's got a license and start offering one of these fintech services. It also means because of the structure, because they don't have these really expensive things like people and buildings, they can offer prices which is really difficult for incumbents to actually compete with. Most of them are kind of freemium models where the banking service, the basic services are 0, and then they'll give you transparent pricing for, I need to borrow money or have an overdraft or whatever it might be. I think most importantly, and hopefully this is positive, because if you're a little bit worried about where things are going, for me, when I think about what the future could be, obviously I don't know what the future is, none of us do, no one does. Many things can happen. We can predict that things are changing incredibly quickly, so it's definitely going to be different. But I think successful organizations, successful people, have got one thing that's running for them, and that's they've got clear purpose. Because it doesn't matter about the technology. The technology is secondary. It's something that you use to achieve something. If you've got clear purpose in terms of what you're trying to do, you can explore all these different scenarios that I've presented. I'll just give you two examples of purposeful organizations. First up, because they're close by, is Discovery. I think they're both actually close by, from South Africa. All right? When you look at their share price compared to their major competitors, there's a huge differentiation. Their products are better in many cases, not always, but where they've been successful is because they've had this key purpose of focusing on making people healthier, helping people to live longer. And by setting that as their core goal, not necessarily for profit, they've been very profitable, but having this as their core goal, it's allowed them to do things that other companies just can't. They've encouraged really cool people to come into their organization because of the purpose. Who wants to go and work in a bank and just do spreadsheets and go into, I don't know, double entry or go and run some really boring ops process? No one. They've got those processes in Discovery. But if you're part of a team that's trying to help people live longer, it's much easier to be motivated to go and do your best work. Investors love it because they can see the purpose behind it, so you get cheaper funding rates. And you get a premium that sits there because you believe that with this ethos, this mentality, that there will be better things coming in the years to come, so you see this price explode. The intrinsic value is way below what the actual valuation is. You get this premium on the share price. And there are many examples, not just in financial services across the board. Another example, I think, is Easy Equities. Easy Equities, another South African company, their goal is to democratize investing. Their starting point with Charles Savage wasn't to put a big business plan together and work out what the margins should be and go and deal 1,001 other things, what's compliance, and what do we need in the legal structure. He just set the goal on a sticky note, literally a sticky note, to say, I want to democratize investing. And that was enough to go and get support from a couple of major investors. I think it was from Paul Harris and Mark Barnes. So when you set purpose, it doesn't matter which organizations you look at. Google, organizing the world's information. Tesla, making sustainable transport commonplace. Easy Equities, democratizing investing. Time and again, you see them doing these incredible things with technology, because their goal wasn't to use technology for technology's sake or just to make profits. Their goal was to save or solve a genuine problem. So I suppose that's my wrap-up in terms of things to think about and what skills you need in terms of moving into this next 8 to 10 years. You've got to find purpose. You've got to be curious. You've got to go and observe and see what's out there, both now and what potentially could be coming around the corner. And if you can get yourself into a space where the organizations that you affiliate with are similarly minded around having a purpose and being curious and inspiring you to do so, you've found your fit, you've found the right place to be. Because it should be a positive story. I think it's a positive story. But if you close your eyes and put your heads in the sand, it's going to be a very negative story, and you really will miss out. So with that, I'll close and open it up for questions. Who's got a question? And who's got a microphone?
Hello, I've got a microphone here. Okay, I'm coming to you, Rikus.
Who's going to ask a question here?
Hi, Colin. I'm Rikus. Thank you very much. Like Chris said, I don't know if I should be excited or scared. I'm going to start off with a difficult one. So I'm a big U2 fan. And in one of Bono's speeches, he said the previous generation's big accomplishment was putting a man on the moon. And that our generation's accomplishment should be bringing man back to Earth. The reason why I'm saying this is we chase all these, or we develop all these technologies, and in essence it's about humans. We at Capricorn Group and our organizations, we pride ourselves in having personal relationships with our clients. We're a relationship bank. So my question is, how do you balance the using all this technology but still keeping that personal touch with your clients, and not only making it about technology and sitting in front of a screen? Because in Namibia we still very much face-to-face, person-to-person kind of country and organizations. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I think the way I look at it is personalization doesn't mean that it has to be me chatting with you. Okay? Personalization is you're generating an emotion. You're making me feel like I want to be with you, to be friendly with you, to trust you. I feel positive to be with you. And so where you've got the opportunity to do that and generate that feeling with technology, you should investigate it. We shouldn't be, bounded in the sense that it's not really personalization and when we go down a technology route. And I think when you start to see I think even 3 or 4 years ago, I was having a conversation with the Soul Machine bot with a VR headset. I felt like I was chatting to a human. She made me feel good. This is 4 or 5 years ago. And she was able to make me feel good because in the algorithm, which I didn't say, is there's a video camera that's pointing and it's actually observing my body language. So as I smile, she smiles. As I frown because I don't understand what she's saying or I don't believe what she's saying, she tracks back and rephrases. I felt like I was, talking to a human. So you've got to look at it and say the output you're looking for is to build trust, to build, a relationship. But it's wrong to say that you can't do that with technology because time and again we are seeing that happen. Right? Another simple example, I look at the way that my kids, play on things like Fortnite, probably one of the best examples today of being in a virtual world. He builds genuine friendships with people where he's only seeing their avatars. So I don't think, and certainly I think it's going to change considerably in the next 10 years, we have to be in the same room with each other, or even human to human, to generate very personalized feelings in terms of how we deal with each other.
Thank you, Colin. I'll get you the next one. We have a question from Dr. Bernard here.
Thank you very much for the very stimulating talk. I'm not from finance, I'm from medicine.
That's much better.
And sometimes politics. It's very interesting, and I like your statement where you say democratizing financing. And I take it to speak to equity. Now, we know very well that with technology, a lot of people are actually left behind. And that's why we talk about those number of people who own this much of wealth in the world. And that is polarizing the world. I think what you said here point to a possibility, a real possibility of equity and access at community level. But I would like you to expand a little bit more in practical terms. How do we not leave the vast majority of people behind with this speed of light technological advancement?
Yeah.
And then I'm not a natural pessimist, but obviously the world is a threat. I mean, we can run at the speed of light, but crash instantly. Whether it's a nuclear annihilation, or climate, or maybe an asteroid that is hurtling around the Earth. So what is your thought of that without scaring the audience?
So I think the first one's easier. So the first answer, but they're both very depressing, aren't they? I mean, the first answer is not a great answer because there is a significant threat of leaving the world behind. There's no question about it. A lot of those examples are from US and China and other parts of the world, UK, Europe, and clearly they have a massive advantage because they've got consistent, cheap energy and connectivity and capital, wealth, education. Internet's available for most people there, Wi-Fi all over the place, very different geographies. There's lots of reasons why they're going to obviously have a distinct advantage. So you can assume, I would have thought, the danger for a lot of countries, not just within Africa, is I don't know if we get left behind, but we see the rest of the world just progressing and we become the purchasers of their services. Okay? Which is still some benefit because at least those services are going to get cheaper, so whatever we're importing isn't quite as expensive as it used to be. On the other side, the opportunity to go and compete is there. But now you need business and government and populations to start collectively working with each other to go and scale that. You need to go and create that Silicon Valley momentum. Put cities with structures, and I'll simplify it and say, put that coffee culture shock into a city to see if you can be the stimulant for innovation within your own countries. Clearly there's a lot more to it than that, but the opportunity's there. But it's only going to happen if governments and big business are working together to go and drive this. Otherwise, we will get a little bit left behind, or significantly left behind. Having said that, there is one positive. I did a session with a consortium of different fintechs, and they make a very good observation. Big business in the US and Europe and the UK is unlikely to have Africa in their sights. They start in America, they go to Europe, they look at the UK, they go and chat to their mates down in Australia, they do Asia, they get into China, they do India, and suddenly we're 10 years later, they still haven't even looked at Africa. Which means that people that want to create fintechs and startups in Africa do have a significant time frame where they're only having to compete against people within their inner markets. The other thing is, because we've got this tapestry, I think, of, 52 countries across the continent who are not doing a EU sort of moment, you've got opportunity to put new and novel ideas into individual countries and not even face the risk of someone, say, from Nigeria coming and competing in this country, or vice versa, doing something here and growing that quite nicely. So I think there are opportunities. On the other big threats, I don't know. Someone else can answer that. I don't know. I hope we don't get blown up. That's all I can say. There's one here at the front.
Okay, there is. I'm going to follow protocol here, but there is a question on Facebook as well, which I think it does address your previous question. But if you do have something to add, I'll just read it out. A comment says, neobanks definitely sound like the next banking level, although one has to wonder, in a third world country where easily 40% or more of the population is located in rural or non-city locations.
Yeah, so
how do you ensure they don't lose the market?
So I think, again, I can't speak for Namibia, but in South Africa, there's a huge drive to try to bank the unbanked, right? And if you think about some of the things that are happening or need to happen in that space. So first, you have to have government and interest to go and drive it, because it is structurally deficient, and you need to go and put opportunities in place to go and target these audiences. Secondly, you have to do it with technology, because if you're trying to go and get really low margin, you need millions of people to be your customers to make it cost effective and actually work it. Okay, so you've got some hurdles to get over, but there are many things that are coming in which are breaking down those hurdles. So for example, in South Africa, there's a platform called Moya app. Moya app is a reverse billing, because actually, although even if I give you a free bank account, if you can't access it because you're paying extortionate data costs on your mobile, or you can't actually access data at all, it's completely irrelevant. And if I can't give you a mechanism where you can access it regularly so you can make payments, it's completely irrelevant. You're going to stick with cash. Okay? Now, Moya app is a reverse billing platform where you actually, they've got 7 or 8 million customers who are able to now access banking services, because every time they're using the internet, the data costs are picked up by the underlying providers. That's one example. Does, over the years, Starlink start to open up things? Probably, maybe, definitely, I don't know. The telcos. Again, a lot of that comes down to structural and political decisions about how to go and make sure that you access as many people in your country to the internet.
Thank you for that. Here's a question.
My name is Emil van Zyl. My question is, I see a tsunami of change in the financial sector, as you just explained it, and it's a lot of information which I struggle to understand it, everything, but what I am thinking is, from a regulatory point of view, I see different scenarios playing out, and the one is that, we see more and more involvement across borders, and that will obviously become a big issue for the regulator. Now, the regulator has a few options. He can either adapt quickly and to make provision for what's happening currently in the environment, or he may become totally irrelevant over time. So what is your experience in terms of from a regulatory perspective, how adaptive is the regulators, are the regulators in this regard? And, because they have also must make some changes to the regulatory environment in terms of laws, regulations, and so on to get used to this new situation, and I'm just worried that the financial sector is moving in a very, very fast direction, and the regulator is not keeping up with the pace.
Yeah, so it's every country, every regulator is different, and some are very progressive, I think. The Monetary Authority of Singapore is often referenced because they're making great strides. I think the regulators in South Africa have in general been very good. So they're not going to go at the speed of innovation, that's for sure. And my dealings with regulators has always been net positive if you can take them on a journey. So obviously they're coming in with a mindset of their concern. They don't want things to break. They've got a systemic set of institutions that they've got to regulate to make sure that the whole financial industry is working. If that goes down, we've got big problems. So you can understand the perspective they're coming from. But you can still go in and take them, on the journey, and sometimes it's step by step. So, for example, with the Saab in South Africa, how do we get them to go and buy into the cloud? Well, we show it to them. We start working, with the models. They start to get interested into it. Then we go to the next level and we say we want to go and put it offshore. And this is how we convince you that the security is good enough and we're not going to lose the data. You're not going to lose control. And you can make progress that way. It doesn't mean every regulator is going to go with it, but in general, it's the only way I know is to be an advocate of what you're trying to do and try to bring them on the journey, and over time be patient and show them how it's going to benefit not just you as a financial services provider, but the whole industry, which means then working with the rest of the industry. It's not something that you sell just as institution A or B. You work with all of the other institutions to try to go and keep this argument and this discussion up and running. Then you collaborate. We did a really good collaboration a few years ago in the early days of blockchain, where we brought in, I think it was R3 and others, a bunch of people from banks, all the different banks, competitors, right? People might worry that there's collusion. It's not collusion. You have to collaborate with other organizations from the same industry from time to time if you're going to improve it. Telcos have to collaborate to go and work out how to go and get data and cost down, same as banks. So collaborating, but this time we had National Treasury involved, and we had the Saab and the other regulatory bodies, our own support, Bankers Association, for example, and the different associations. That starts to go and spread, the word around it, and people get comfortable. And that's what I see time and time again. If you work on that sort of structure where over time you're bringing them and you're not just going off on your own and just getting frustrated, you can make progress. But unfortunately, it will take time, and most regulators will not go at the speed that you want them to or you think that they should go to, based on what you can actually do with the technology today.
Thank you, Colin. We have a question here from a student from Hagagengop School, I believe.
Thank you.
One of the guys down here had a question as well.
Okay, I'm coming there.
Okay, cool. Good morning, sir, and everybody. So, when you were giving us the speech, you used an example, or you were talking about artificial intelligence and robotics, and you said something like, human beings are very scared of this or not necessarily interested in this. This is because we have an idea that this technology is possibly going to take over our jobs. There's that. And then you're also talking about exponential thinking, being able to think about what the world will look like in the future, like 15 to 10 years from now. The thing is, people don't necessarily care about, or from my personal perspective, people don't necessarily care about what's going to happen like 10 years from now. Even if you look at things like global warming, people don't necessarily care about saving the earth unless it's happening right now. Even, for example, like we're in a pandemic and a lot of people in this room aren't wearing their masks. That just shows how people don't necessarily care about the future. So, with that being said...
now I'm getting quite worried.
With that being said, is this honestly like a worthy investment, and how do we convince more people to be able to hop on the wagon with all of these dangers that could possibly exist?
Hop on which wagon?
The technology in finance.
So again, I think when I go and listen to other people presenting about the future and technology, I often come out feeling very scared and very worried, because actually I feel completely irrelevant. A lot of these things are just so big, especially for someone at my age. I don't think I've got the time left to go and learn everything I need to learn to fully understand every single aspect of machine learning. I think this is a young person's game, your person's sort of game if you want to start now. So how do you fit in a world like that? And I think you have to go back to continually having this anchor point. Technology is a tool. And you, as a generation, as the younger generation, have got the opportunity to be incredibly determined and purposeful about what you want to achieve. And unlike previous generations, you've got the opportunity to achieve it because these technologies are opening up awesome opportunities to access it, to find other people who understand it to help you to build whatever it is that you want to go and build. In terms of thinking forward, 10 or 15 years, this is a human weakness. None of us are good at that, right? It's why people in this room who deal in asset management and the wealth industry have to continually sell to us this idea that you should be investing in a pension. Sell to us that we should be putting money aside for the future. We are not predisposed to being good at thinking forward more than a couple of hours or a couple of days, right? Therefore, our decisions are usually quite poor, right? Hyperbolic discounting, where we say we do immediacy and we don't do our long-term planning particularly well. We really need help on that. That's a very difficult one to solve. But again, the more purposeful, the more curious you can be, I think the easier it is. Because if you can sit there and you can imagine and say to yourself, this is where I want to be in 10 years, this is what I'll be doing, this is what I want to have an impact in life. When I was sitting there 30 or 40 years ago, I want to say that I tried to do something. If you've got that type of mindset, or you can create it by working with people who do, I think a lot of these worries and issues fall away because then they become opportunities and you don't think about the negative potential consequences quite so much. But that's how I get through it. But it's a great question. I'm not sure there's a sort of cookie cutter, you can do it this way approach.
Thank you, Colin.
My question is, how safe is our finances as we move into virtual banking system, given the high rate of cyber online scammers, where when one loses money, it becomes almost impossible to recover? Should we be excited or should we be scared of this?
Excited. That was a quick answer, wasn't it? I liked your question. But I do want to add to it, this cybersecurity thing, along comes quantum computing. Does it make it harder or easier to go and protect your data? I don't know what the answer is to that. What I do know is that it's a continual battle. But I think there's a deeper question. What I'm more scared about is that we lose faith in the value of money, because that would be equally bad. You see that when you get hyperinflation in countries, like you had in Zimbabwe, for example. And you start thinking about what the cause for it is. If we lose faith in the financial system and the money and this story that we've created that we can trade amongst each other, that's a big problem, because then suddenly we've got no opportunity to go and deal with each other in a way which is meaningful and supports business. So I'm more worried about that than specifically the security concerns of people stealing our individual data or the money that we've got in our accounts.
The next question is, how do we become better at making predictions?
That's a great question. So I think be curious to start with, because it opens up your sort of mindset. So you're going to be really bad at making predictions if you only talk to yourself or you talk to your friends at your school, because you're just not getting the inputs or the information of what's happening out there. Okay? If you can get curious and you start looking at people out there who have got track records of making great predictions. So check out Ray Kurzweil. Look up Singularity University and Peter Diamandis and some of these other sort of futurists and guys that are out there, and start following them, because they're going to be opening your mind and seeding ideas into what the possibilities could be. All right? There's also the flip side. So I've only talked about predictions of things changing radically. Do the other side as well. Think about what's going to stay the same. Right? What's going to be the same in 10 years? I can promise you, you could have done that whole presentation and still come up with the same kind of conclusion about neobanks if you'd have said what is going to stay the same. And what's going to stay the same is that people are never going to want more expensive banking. They're never going to want more complicated banking. And therefore, banks and financial services are continually going to have to find ways to offer their services in cheaper, more efficient, easier to understand, more simplistic type models. Okay? But as a starting point, you're already doing what you need to do to be thinking about the future, which is asking the question and trying to put yourself in an environment where you think about it. So you keep doing that and you're going to be fine.
Hello.
Hello.
We see a future where AI is a normal thing and that robots and machines are there to do anything for us. But isn't this a negative thing as the younger generation grows up? They may lack the skills, the basic skills that once we knew before AI took over.
It could
Thank
be.
you.
It's a good question, isn't it? It could be. But if I'm growing up in a city in London, do I need to understand how to farm wheat or make beer or how this phone works or what 3G is actually based on? I mean, if you think about it, we're in a situation where we cannot live in a world where we understand things. There's just too much to understand. It's impossible. So I'm less worried about that. I don't think the generations coming forward should be worried about not understanding the stuff that's already happened before. They'll try to teach loads of stuff in school, I'm sure. But the reality is the best we can do is find our patch and understand the things that are going to help us to be successful in our patch and focus on that. It's just too much to understand. Take that code example. Let's assume that in 10 or 15 years that coding becomes a thing of the past. All those people that had learnt Python and Cobalt and everything else, their skills are now redundant. And so next generation comes in and you don't need those skills anymore. Although they might be the foundation of where we've got to. Do we need to understand how we got there? I'm not sure we do. I hope we don't, because the world is too big. I see it as lots of small pockets of incredible intelligence who somehow become the fabric of working together, so we're all equally dependent on each other. I don't see how we can reverse that. Which obviously means that we should try to get on with each other.
Thank you, Colin. I just want to play a video. We have a lovely video from our IT department before I take one or two more questions. I did mention, sorry, I don't know if you can see me. I did mention in the beginning that we do take pride in our large IT resources and infrastructure, and we just want to share with you our culture. So just after this video, then I'll take maybe two more questions, and then we will close off with Chris giving us the closing remarks. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tiago de Souza.
My name is Shanae, aka Boss Lady Shay.
My name is Victor Kato.
I'm Contessa Regiu.
I am Jacob Brandt.
Hi, my name is Heidi Chris.
I'm Chris Usep, aka Criso, working in Capricorn Group IT.
What attracted me to Capricorn Group is the way of life.
It's Namibian owned, so I really wanted to be part of that.
All of the individuals that we work with day to day inspire me in such a way that I want to be part of the bigger picture.
Work ethic and the high performance environment.
The money. Okay, I'm joking. It had the biggest IT department in the country.
As an engineer, I knew that they run their own IT house. So I knew that I was coming here and I was going to get stuck in.
I originally started many years ago in a contact center and in dealing with a lot of the customers' inquiries. I worked on many different systems, and my drive and passion for solutioning problems just grew from there, and I wanted more, I needed more, and I wanted to share a lot of the solutions that I wanted to offer to the organization. So someone believed in my skills and they helped me grow on my journey.
Within the IT department, we have different platforms performing different functions. So you have the infrastructure that would keep the servers and the maintenance and the applications up to date. Then you have our area, which we specifically look at payments in how to provide the latest payment solutions to the customers, and also how to support and maintain the ones that's already existing available.
What I would say to someone considering IT is that it's a very broad field with good opportunities at the moment. it's not a position that ties you down to something for the rest of your life.
It's a dynamic environment where change is the only constant. And to work with all of these creative people and to see what they are capable of really makes it very exciting to work for Capricorn Group IT.
What I've realized in the IT field is that it has grown tremendously over the past few years. There's a variety of aspects when you talk about IT. I would say that it is easy to get into IT, but the hard work is staying abreast of technology and working extremely hard at being the best in your field.
Not like other companies where the big brothers are doing the work up from, say, South Africa or whatever. We at Capricorn Group, we actually implement the solutions ourselves.
We have the same driving force. We all work for the same common goal, and that is excellence.
Group IT leaders, they like to see us succeed. They thrive for that. I think they are very encouraging, and I like that.
In my life, I feel that it was a godsend for me because I found my tribe.
What makes it remarkable for me is our amazing culture, our diversity, the exposure and experience we get at Capricorn Group. I think that far outweighs the exposure and experience you'll find at other institutions.
Wow, truly amazing. Thank you. Next question. I'll head over to this lovely lady over here.
Morning.
Morning.
So yeah, we started off with the group of young people standing up, and I think their road is still very open to make decisions and go decide what you want to do and whether you want to go into IT or finance or both. But my question is for the people who have already settled in the spreadsheets of finance, what would your advice be for us to actually remain relevant in the industry and to make sure we don't fall behind?
Yeah, good question. So, same advice that, I don't know your name, but we were trying to pass on there. I think, again, at every moment of your career, I think for me, every moment of your life, I'm happiest when I've got three things that I'm thinking about, right? What's my purpose? So I've got something to tie onto which I want to do, and then trying to put myself in the position where I'm curious, and then having the courage to do something about it. And I find that when I've got those three things running, they'll feed off each other, because it's a lot easier to be courageous and curious if you've got a purpose that you're drawn to. And a purpose isn't, I don't know, I want to earn some money or get promoted. Usually it's something which is emotional and resonates with you, and you want to solve it because it's going to bring some benefit. It's altruistic. And hopefully there's a monetary compensation that comes with it. But finding those problems and being curious about solving them makes it so much easier to have the courage, because in a finance department or any department in a bank or a financial institution, it's really hard to make change. All right? You're part of a system which has been built to have control and to be efficient and to be robust. And when you put those in place to protect whatever it is you're trying to protect, it's quite difficult to change. And so to change it, if you're going to put your head above the parapet and to run experiments and to try new things because you can think it, you can improve it, you've got to have something which is emotionally tying onto you. And if it's big, emotionally, you need to go to the level to say, if it doesn't work, I'm prepared to leave, to go and do something else. The fourth thing is, I can't make up my mind whether this is part or different. I'll let you decide, but you have to network. Right? And this is the same for everyone at every stage in their career, because you're not going to find the answers by talking to yourself. You have to network. You have to get out there, whether it's looking for promotions or new ideas or to bring things into the organizations. You're only going to have success if you use, I don't know if use is the wrong or the right word, let's go and take it a level further, manipulate with other people, interface with other people, use their intelligence and their network and their connections to help you find your purpose and be curious. And to drive forward, with the courage to whatever it is that you want to do. I don't think there's anything you can do now by yourself.
Thank you. We'll take one last question. There we go. I don't know if you can reach. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, this will be the last question because we have to end. But Colin is still around, so you can chat to him after.
I think they've heard enough.
Good morning.
Hello.
Regarding neobanks, I would like to know if they're regulated.
Sorry, say that again?
Regarding neobanks,
yeah.
I would like to know if they're regulated and who would hold them accountable if they crash and consumers lose their money.
Well, it depends which neobank in which market, but
For example, Revolut.
but all of them that I'm aware of would be regulated. Maybe some are sneaking in, they're not true neobanks, but anything that's holding capital deposits in most markets is going to be regulated. Which means that what happens if they go bust and they go into default depends on the structure in that particular market. So, for example, if it's in the UK, I think there's 80 or 90,000 pounds, which is guaranteed by the government, which they pay out if you lose your money on that particular entity. If you're sitting there and you're running your neobank, you'll be managed in terms of the capital structures that you've got to hold, so that if you do have to close, you've actually got to have a process in place for a safe fail, so that your customers are not left out of pocket. A living will is what they call it. So most markets are going to have the fintechs regulated. Where it's interesting is that there are aspects of regulation which do persecute incumbents. And Jamie Dimon has made this point over at JP Morgan a number of times, highlighting that he feels that the regulation isn't as severe for these fintech startups. So, for example, South Africa, none of the incumbent banks would be able to close down their branches across the whole of South Africa. None of them would be able to suddenly be able to go and say, we're not managing cash. So they're losing huge amounts of money because they're having to go and deliver and pick up cash with all the security that goes with it to drop off at branches across the whole of SA. This is not a business that I think they would want to be in if they could change it. Right? But they can't get out of it because they're forced to do it because of regulation and commitments and the relationships with governments. I come along and I'm a Time Bank, or I'm a Spot Money, or I'm a Bank Zero, whoever you want to go and pick, or we can just build one today if we want. We don't have those issues. We can go off and do things that we want to do, and therefore we're by definition facing lighter regulation, and we have got more opportunities. So I think Jamie Dimon does have a point. A lot of the big banks are, because they're so systemic and structurally important for the functioning of world finance, they find that they are not able to move with the speed and frivolity or sort of risk that a small bank can actually take. I've got 1 million customers, I go wrong, no one cares. I'm banking 300 million people, it's a big issue. Hope that answers your question.
Great. Colin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a great talk. We enjoyed it. Can people reach you?
Yeah.
How?
If you put the slide presentation back up, guys, here's an easy way to reach me. Guys at the back.
So they can, we can see it here.
Okay. So that's we'll leave that up for a while. That's a nice, easy way. So that's just a QR code which you can use on your camera to find me on LinkedIn, and you're welcome to connect. If you guys aren't LinkedIn yet, get onto LinkedIn. I know it's a little bit young, but it'd be great to start seeing your exams going in there and which universities that you're going to and those first jobs, so that you get in with the rest of the people on LinkedIn. Otherwise, just look out for me on general search, Colin Iles.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Colin, thank you once again, and safe trip back home. Please stay for a bit and chat to a few people. I know they might want to ask you questions one-on-one. I would like to welcome Chris just for closing remarks.
Is this the seasoned Chris?
Yeah, the seasoned Chris. And ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of food. Yes, children. This side where the coffee was, and also outside here, so that there's not too much traffic.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Colin, as well. I think I'm more excited now, but I'm still scared because you put some creative ideas in my co-workers' heads. So for Group IT, you've actually raised the bar now. We need to do 90 seconds onboarding. Yeah, but thank you, and thank you to the young ones here as well. I think from the questions that you have posed, the future looks bright. It's up to you to use the resources at your disposal at your schools just to learn as much as possible. And hopefully, you know, if you come up with creative ideas, there was one banking app that I saw. Hopefully, you can create a solution for us, and we'll be the first to scoop you up in Capricorn Group IT. But nonetheless, thank you everyone for making the time to come to the Inspire event. I hope everyone is really inspired. And please, you know, reach out to Colin and have the conversations, you know, ask more. I think there's a lot of new technologies, new ways of doing things that we can really explore and try to implement in our Namibian context. Okay, thank you everyone, and I wish everyone a blessed day.